Then there is a right to share in scientific advancements. There is a right to participate in cultural level activities. Knowing just a brief overview of the rights falling under the UDHR, I will now take you to the Indian Constitution. Very proudly, many a times, and there's a consensus all around that our preamble is self-explanatory, because the three precious words within the preamble: justice, liberty, and equality. Justice, social, economic, and political; liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship; and equality of status and of opportunity. At this juncture, today, on the 27th of December 2024, if I have to ask a question to myself, do we live up to these three words within the preamble of the Indian Constitution, or do we outlive these three words falling within the preamble of the Indian Constitution? I'm sure the answer lies in the daily news report, which brings in a lot of news about how there are grave and systematic violations of rights, be it within the human rights, international human rights law, or be it within the Indian Constitution as guaranteed to each and every individual as such. That's an apparent answer in itself. At this juncture, it strikes me, when I spoke of equality, which is a very, very important right, how do we define equality? That's a very, very debatable issue, but it strikes me of long back when the US Supreme Court, in a famous case of Brown versus Board of Education, for the first time in the history of US judiciary, it defined equality, where the facts of the case were that all these fair-skinned children in the school were permitted to mingle with each other, and there was a little tiny girl, Negro girl, who was dark-skinned. She was made to sit in the corner of the classroom. This was challenged as ultra-virus the US Constitution. The conscience of the then Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court was shaken, and for the first time, the US Supreme Court defined equality within the US Constitution, stating that there can't be inequalities on the basis of color of skin or what we term as racial discrimination. If this be so, are inequalities existing? Giving you a very simple example, we hear a lot, we debate a lot about gender discrimination. So how do we define gender, and which are the categories which fall within this very term, the very word gender? Our Constitution specifically signifies non-discrimination on the ground of sex. Now, sex is quite different from gender discrimination. Within Articles 15 and 16, you find user of this word sex. Sex is a biological factor, and here lies a difference. Well, I am born as a female and therefore I am a woman. A person may have been born as a male and therefore he is a man. But gender are socially structured differences. So you are a woman, so you should be very obedient. You are a woman, you should be soft-spoken. It doesn't befit of a woman to be speaking in a loud tone. You are a woman, so you should be very decently dressed. You are a woman, so rearing children at home, taking care of elderly is all your job and not our job as such. Well, you are a woman, so you need permission. At every stage of your life, you are a woman, so these are all the expectations and socially structured differences. When we speak of gender, that's inclusive of men, women, as well as in the history of the Indian judiciary. In April 2014, for the very first time in the history of Indian judiciary, The court in the case of Nalsa versus Union of India for the first time stated that transgenders are also equal citizens, equally entitled to enjoyment of fundamental rights and freedoms, and therefore they also need to be integrated within the structure of the society. So it's not just men and women, but it's also transgenders and any other category that may fall within the word gender. But till date, bias, till date, these socially structured practices continue, and it amounts to grave and systematic violation of women's rights. The recent case which I can signify is that there was a hijab issue which created controversy all across the nation, where in the state of Karnataka, the school going children who were wearing hijab, which is just half a scarf, covering their head as such, were asked to remove their scarf and then enter in the school, because the rules and regulations states that, well, we treat all children as equal. Now, when we say right to life, it means and includes right to bodily integrity. It means and includes right to choice. So if by my own choice, if I wear a hijab, can I be asked to remove the hijab for my own protection, for my own security, for my own comfort if I wish to wear? Then in that case, I can't be asked. But here are certain practices wherein most of the times the arguments advocated are, well, our religion states that, young children, young girl child, women should be wearing hijab or the burqa system. These practices prevail almost in every religion as such, which are gender discriminatory, specifically targeting women and young girls as such. Now look at the judgment which was passed by the Supreme Court, by the division bench, and there was a split verdict by the two judges. One judge stating that yes, hijab should be banned because we give due weightage to equality, all children are equal before law. The other judge stating that no, well, there is something like right to privacy, which is, though not specifically within the Indian Constitution, it's implicit within right to life of the Indian Constitution, as enumerated under Article 21 of the Constitution. So let her privacy be protected. Let a woman who feels comfortable with hijab, let her continue to wear so. You can't impose such restrictions which may go against her own right of choice as such. Now here is where the matter, because of the split verdict of none other than the Apex Court of India, may now be referred to either the Constitution bench or the larger bench as such. This is where the crux lies. Our judiciary has done a very great job by interpreting various legal provisions in the context of human rights, liberalizing lesbian relationship, decriminalizing Section 377 of the old IPC as such, promoting, lesbian, gay relationships, so on and so forth, with the three new laws which are put in its place on the 1st of July 2024. How successful would these laws be is a matter of concern, despite the changes in the nomenclature, because I am given to understand that almost 95% of the contents remain the same. Speaking in context of gender bias, well, I'm sure one would argue stating that gender discrimination exists all across the globe. There's no dispute with regard to such a thought process or thinking or the statement made by anyone, because it's the UN report of 1980 itself which states that women constitute half of the world population. They perform 2/3 of the total work hours, only 1/10 of the world income, and they are owners of 1/100 of the world property. Being an Indian, I must be rather more concerned about what's happening in my own country. Let me tell you that out of the total workforce comprising of women and children, 95% of the total population comprising of women and children who are putting in of labor are working in unorganized sector or informal sector. So what do I mean by informal sector? जो मजदूरी करते हैं, जो सब्जियां बेचते हैं, जो घर पे काम करते हैं, and of course this also strikes me of what about unpaid labor so far as women are concerned, of all the jobs that she performs within home. Why is it not recognized? Both internationally now I think there is a move with regard to unpaid labor so far as the job women performs within the four confines of the home. So this is where women work in the building construction activities, in road construction activities, and they perform certain odd jobs like, rolling puris in catering parties where the lavish parties are being organized as such, where if 95% of women and children who are working in informal sector, labor legislations like the Minimum Wages Act, Employee State Insurance Act, Equal Remuneration Act of 1976, Maternity Benefits Act, etc., doesn't apply to informal sector. So where are they to go for justice when we are discussing human rights and the Indian Constitution? That's a grave matter of concern. At times, I've been a law teacher since more than 25 years, teaching postgraduate law students. Many a times when I address public gatherings or in the classroom, when I speak to my students, a question often, I just don't say often, most often raised is कि अजमल कसाब को इतने पैसे खर्च क्यों किए इंडियन नेशन ने उसके पीछे, और उसको इतना लंबा चौड़ी उसकी हियरिंग क्यों दी? Well, there is a sound reason which is within the Indian Constitution. भारत के संविधान में ही है. When I speak of fundamental rights, there is Article 14 which speaks of, it's just a one sentence article, the state shall not deny to any person equality before law and equal protection of law. So when it is said that the state cannot deny to any person just doesn't mean an Indian citizen, the one who is from an enemy country within the territorial borders of India, giving him a fair chance of hearing. There is a principle or a rule under the administrative law, audi alterum partem. A person cannot be condemned unheard. Give him a fair chance of hearing, and that is what our Indian nation has done. Given a fair chance of hearing, there was all evidence against him and he was finally executed, death sentence or capital punishment. Again, when I'm speaking of death sentence or capital punishment, the question which may pose in the mind of all those who are hearing me is, death sentence, फांसी की सजा, whereas our भारत के संविधान में right to life is a crucial right as such which cannot be taken away, and therefore we have not legitimized euthanasia. So how can we justify capital punishment or death sentence? Being a human rights teacher and a human rights activist, I feel that death sentence should be totally erased, eliminated from the statute books, because it doesn't serve any of the purpose, especially not the deterrent purpose. In many of the developed nations, capital punishment or death sentence has been eliminated and statistics reveal lower commission of crime. We can learn lessons from the developed nation when we give due weightage to right to life. Most of us are aware of that in Aruna Shanbag's case, when Pinky Virani had appealed before the Supreme Court, stating that, she be given active euthanasia, lethal injection for being in a vegetative existence for over years, the court refused in categorical terms, stating that we uphold right to life of a person under Article 21 of the Constitution, and therefore active euthanasia no case, but passive euthanasia in exceptional case subject to following certain required guidelines laid down by the Supreme Court. We are aware of what is passive euthanasia. That's withdrawal of the life support system, withdrawal of ventilator as such. So, and that too, all done in presence of proper consent taken, informed decisions done, and the magistrate, the medical professional, advocate, all would have been present, and a proper procedure is followed. When we give weightage to right to life, why is it that we have still retained death penalty or capital punishment? That's a matter of concern. And I think it's high time now, after when we will be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Constitution of India on 26th of January 2025, that we introspect, we look into it, we research on these perspectives, that to what extent are the rights, which we term also as human rights, are being complied, are being implemented within our country.